Professional road cycling is an inherently dangerous sport.
Oh, that crash of so many riders on the right-hand side. Oh, that's not good news. We hope that Jasper Philipsen is okay.
On descents, speeds regularly exceed 100 kilometers per hour or 60 miles per hour. But in the event of a crash, all the riders have to protect themselves is a lightweight helmet and some lycra. In this sport, there are no roll cages, no airbags. There's not even body armor or full-face helmets. So when you hit the tarmac, it hurts.
Big move to the left-hand side. Is he okay? Is he not?
It's something that I know only too well. I had my fair share of crashes in my time as a pro rider. I broke both collarbones, I broke my pelvis, and I lost an awful lot of skin. But I am still here. Others are not still here. In a period of just over 2 years, 6 riders have lost their lives through crashing in UCI ranked road races. 6 riders have died competing in the sport they loved. Could any or even all of those fatal crashes have been avoided? What is being done to make road racing safer? What is being done to stop riders dying?
We can never be satisfied when we have crashes.
Cycling is a dangerous sport. We all know that.
But I think where the danger comes from is just the need and want and fight within the peloton to be at the front.
That's the main problem. We have brakes. Yes, we have brakes. But if you want to be in the front, sometimes you need to take some risk.
The greater the speed, the greater the damage will be.
Yeah, there's an incentive to want to win at all costs.
We broke bones. We have concussions. Sorry, nobody else in the room has it.
They're very concerned by the multiplication over the last years about obstacles on the roads.
I cannot speak for the whole peloton. For me, they are not doing enough.
So of course, if a rider is willing to take that risk, it's because, somehow they're being motivated to do that.
What's the aim of cycling? Go as fast as you can.
And not pointing finger left and right and say, riders always complain. Yeah, but we are on the ground.
Even one rider who will die is too many.
I've been a pro rider myself. I've worked in pro cycling for 13 years since. I've watched bike racing for 3 decades, and I'm getting increasingly concerned. Some online databases show a 3-fold increase in reported injuries between 2014 and 2025, despite the average number of race days per pro rider having dropped in that time. So riders are racing less, but crashing more. According to the UCI's own race incident database, which it's worked on with Ghent University since 2021, there were close to 500 incidents in 2024 alone. Less than half of those incidents were described as unprovoked rider error, which means that over half were not down to rider error. Speeds have increased from 40 kilometers per hour in men's World Tour races in 2020 to 43 in 2025. But surely that can't be the only reason behind the dramatic increase in rider injuries. Perhaps the peloton does need slowing down, though. I don't know what the answers are, and so I've been on a journey to find out, speaking to current pros, former pros, and even the president of the UCI. I began by speaking to rider representative Matteo Trentin, pro for 14 years.
It's difficult to say. For sure, it got faster. And with speed, we didn't really adapt what cycling is in terms of circuit, in terms of what we do with increasing of speed. And if you see now, we are actually ticking off boxes of the fastest this, the fastest that, the fastest the other one, every single year.
And what are those increases in speed down to, would you say?
Oh, a lot of things. You have like a training point of view, nutrition point of view, material point of view. And these 3 things together for sure brought cycling into a next level of speed. This one I can say since I turned professional. I always been focused on the classics. So when I turned pro, it was still a Bonen and Cancellara era. And then Greg Van Avermaet and Peter Sagan came in. And then Wout van Aert, Van der Poel, and now Pogacar comes in again. And every time is a step above. And if you want to keep on with these guys, everybody needs to understand what they do, why they do, how they do, and adapt. And not say doing the same, but going into a point where you can compete with them.
10 years ago, physical abilities were a bigger part of the whole picture, no? Because it was so much harder. It wasn't as important to get into the corner first, no? You knew anyway it's gonna be about the legs at the end of the day. Now, many times it's quite important to start the climb on the front. If you want to follow today's move on the climb, if you're not on the wheel, then good luck with that.
I remember actually riding next to you in 2012 Tour of Britain, and we're coming down this little lane. You said, "Be careful down here. There's a really narrow bridge at the bottom." I said, "All right, cool." And then after I said, "How do you know that?" You said, "It's on my Garmin." And I think that was the first time that I'd seen someone using a Garmin really in that form. And now, 200 riders have that. And rather than going, the section coming up and it's poor roads, or it's a narrow bridge, or it's a dangerous descent, rather than it being a warning that, right guys, everyone take it easy down there, back off, get down that section, and then we'll carry on as we were. It's being taken the other way, that there's a dangerous section, let's all be at the front so you don't get caught behind a crash, or there's an issue, or there's a split.
Also, there is more and more of road furniture being built each and every year to regulate the traffic and make it more efficient for the cars to slow down in the city centers and so on, which is not good for racing. We don't race on a closed track or circuit like in other motorsports. I think we need to push for more to be done as soon as possible, because at the end of the day, some things can be changed probably. And I think also we need to listen to the majority of all stakeholders, no? Teams, riders, and organizers also.
We are on the ground. We broke bones. We have concussions. Sorry, nobody else in the room has it. So if we say something is dangerous, it's probably because it's dangerous. Because you were a rider before. We race in the heat, we race in the cold, we race under the rain, we race in the wind, we race in road, we race in nice road. We always race. And I think we deserve a place which is a little bit better than what we are putting now into this discussion. If we say it's not good, it's because it's not good.
We create this sort of mentality, again, that I suppose is the best word to describe it, that you don't even want to question it. It's like, oh, well, okay, the race is on, so I'm racing, but if you don't feel comfortable, you have the right to say, I don't feel comfortable. And you actually have the right to say, I'm not going to start. But we're too afraid to do that.
I can be quite fast in the descents and so on, but then it's down to each rider to choose if they want to follow or not. I think some riders, especially the older riders, they are still very used to the way racing was in past, when we all give each other more space and we all came to the corner in one line, stretched out, and nobody ever passed anyone. But now it's more like racing, and you need to concentrate and focus and take care about your position, close the doors before the corner, not let people pass you each and every corner. And some riders are struggling with this more than others.
And we know Mohoric, he is an absolute daredevil because he put himself off the road. He still survived, he still made the difference, leans into the corner and almost rests on the wall. He's giving everything.
The actual, not political, but rule-making entity of cycling, which is the UCI, should come in, but they never do. They always do the bird that put their head into the sand when it's time to do something.
Whenever there are major crashes, there's always a fair amount of blame aimed towards the UCI. So I travelled to Switzerland to meet David Lappartient. As the president of the sport's governing body, surely he bears the ultimate responsibility. I wanted to ask him what he thinks is going on with the increase in injuries and incidents, what he's planning on doing about it, and first and foremost, exactly what the role of the UCI is when it comes to safety in road racing.
First of all, we consider that we are on the same boat, athletes, teams, organizers, and the UCI, and we have the common goal, that is to ensure the more safety than what we have today, and this is what we try to do every day. We want to have safe races, not only at the highest level, but for all the levels. Our role is just to put the frame, the regulation, and of course the organizer will have the responsibility first to organize the race, and second is also the one liable to organize this race in a perfect way vis-a-vis the public authorities or the UCI itself.
Rider down from Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl, and that is not good news. It's Mikel Honore.
There's been 6 riders that have died in a period of just over 2 years in UCI ranked road races. Would you agree that that's a statistic that doesn't look very good for our sport right now?
Even one rider who will die is too many. Of course, we have to look into comparison with the also with the past, but because there is always a lot of emotion and it's completely normal. You don't take part in a race to die. We all know that we are not in a closed stadium, that there are more risk. When you are in descent of a mountain, you know there is more risk, that's for sure. However, it's each time how we can reduce the speed. If I take, unfortunately, the crash of Gino Mader, not far away from here, you can have a look. So look, the road was very, very large. Surface was very, very good. There were no obstacles directly, and it happened.
So the UCI are responsible for creating the rules and the regulations that should lead to a safe race. It is then down to individual race organisers to correctly implement them. But what happens if they don't? What happens if a race is regularly found to be unsafe because the organisers are not following those rules?
We started some years ago to challenge more the organisers to follow the different rules, specifications, and so on. And we, unfortunately, have to take sometimes some decisions whether not to accept some races in the calendar the year after, or sometimes they have a fine with also, we provide a safety manager the year after to implement correctly safety at their own cost, but we hire directly ourselves, a supervisor in a way. Or there can be also a relegation from a Pro Series to Class 1 or from World Tour to, for example, to Pro Series, and sometimes for 1 year, sometimes for 3 years. So yes, we took some decisions like this, and we also had some fine for some of them. But we always tried, first of all, to prevent. The goal is not only to take sanctions if it's not right, it's more to say how can do not to have this or not to have it again.
In terms of demoting a race in terms of its UCI ranking then because they have not adhered to the safety rules that the UCI are governed by, does that not then imply that you're saying it's okay for lesser ranked riders to compete in races that have been deemed not safe enough for the highest ranked riders?
I would say, first of all, that for us, safety is a priority, not only for the top riders, but for all the riders worldwide. So, the value of the life of a rider of Class 2 is the same as the rider of World Tour. So we want to have safe races, not only at the highest level, but for all the levels. However, it's true that there is less pressure on Category 2 because you have less vehicles, you have less motorbikes, so the pressure is less important.
So, racers can be fined, struck off the calendar completely, or demoted in ranking if they're found to not meet UCI requirements. But I wanted to find out from the riders if that's actually being implemented in races that they don't feel are safe, and if it is, whether they feel that's helping.
I think it's improved over years, slightly, but only at World Tour level, at World Tour races. And then you go to point 1, point 2s, and it's like, pwah. There's cars on the roads in certain races, and they're all still pro races, and there's just such a drop-off. And it's like, welcome to the jungle. It's a mess.
I have to say there is like let's call it a small safety rule book for organizers. And you see constantly, every single time, that rules are broken or not respected. And constantly, every single time, you don't see any acting by the UCI official, which are the jury, because of course the UCI office people are not at the races, but the official, so the commissaires. I never see a fine against the race organizer because the final wasn't straight, because the barriers were not where places, because this or that part of the race were not safe enough. When I turned pro in 2011, one of the races everybody was speaking about being a dangerous race was the last stage of the panel. And it's always been like this. It's like that. And nobody do anything to make it better. That's the main problem. We have brakes. Yes, we have brakes. But if you want to be in the front, sometimes you need to take some risk. The thing is, when you have 20 guys taking the same risk for the same corner because the course design doesn't allow you to move up later, and before it's a mess anyway, that race is super dangerous from many, many, many years, and nobody do anything about it. It's just keeping on every year. So this year there were probably the worst amount of crashes, and guess what's going to happen next year? Nothing.
In some ways, the UCI is an easy target, an easy place to aim the blame. However, they are trying to make changes that they hope will make things safer. This year, they announced a new minimum handlebar width rule that will be implemented on January the 1st, and a gear ratio limit that was supposed to be tried out at this year's Tour of Guangxi. Both were controversial for different reasons, and the latter was eventually scuppered by component manufacturer SRAM through the Belgian Competition Authority. But those new regulations were not made up on a whim. They were suggestions made by SAFER, which is an independent entity established in 2023 by the UCI and all professional stakeholders to implement a structured and systematic approach to improving safety. SAFER's purpose is to use data and statistics to do that. Although it's in its early days, I want to know why the data shows that more than half of the incidents are not down to rider error. I mean, surely there should be fewer external factors that are causing riders to crash.
The goal is to reduce what are the external reasons. For example, if you protect more obstacles, if you ensure that surface will be good, you have a lot of things that are in the hands of the organizers. And also, for example, if I take the yellow card, is also to improve riders' behavior. And sometimes I've been a cyclist also myself, not at highest level, but you are in a bunch, sometimes you look at the right and something will go on the left. And yes, it can happen. We know that. So we can't pretend that we will reduce this to 0% because there will still be riders' behavior, sometimes because they took, yes.
I think my point is all crashes should be as a cause of rider behaviour, because what we're saying is that 50% at the moment are not because of riders,
yeah.
So then it's not their fault. But all crashes should be really their fault if they're in the correct environment for a race.
Yeah, but for example, if you have a puncture, if you are a puncture with your tire, it's not directly the rider's behaviour.
Yeah.
But if it's in the descent, then you can crash because it can happen, and it's not. Then you still have your punctures. However, what is more difficult today is also that more and more municipalities are, moving or making some adaptations on their roads to make them more peaceful, maybe for the cars or for pedestrian but it's not always the case for a bicycle race. Sometimes you had wonderful roads where we were used to have some races, and the year after the same road will be with many obstacles, but there is still no B plan to escape this road for this race. Okay, you can even protect the obstacles, but it's better not to have the obstacles, and the organizer has no opportunity to sometimes to make some modification on this. I'm very concerned by the multiplication over the last years about obstacles on the roads. Not because they are not well indicated, not because they are not well protected, but just because at 50 km/h, even if it's well protected or well indicated, there is a wave in a bunch, and the first 10 will go through, and then you will touch the wheel of the guy in front of you. So it's not directly riders' behavior, but it's not directly the responsibility of the organizers.
There is no doubt that road furniture has been an increasing issue in road racing, and there's no really easy solution to that. There's also no doubt that the riders have to take at least some responsibility for the safety of themselves and those around them. I mean, they all have access to brakes, so they can all slow down if they want to. However, they're paid to race bikes, which means going fast. If you're a sprinter who starts pulling on the brakes every time there's danger, you are not going to be winning any bunch sprints. So it's a bit of a conundrum, and so I wanted to hear from the riders as to whether the Peloton should be looking more at themselves and their own actions if they really want to make racing safer.
Pascal Ackermann also crashed out on a day where he was one of the top favourites for the sprint.
Ultimately, we are bike racers, and it is mostly rider error that causes crashes. I can be quite fast in the descents and so on, but then it's down to each rider to choose if they want to follow or not.
He's giving everything. And look at it, every single centimetre of the road being exploited now by Tadej Mohoric.
So of course, if a rider is willing to take that risk, it's because, somehow they're being motivated to do that. Are the stakes too high? Like if I'm not there in first position, I don't win the race or I don't get a result, I don't have a contract, my future might be at risk, so.
Sometimes, the UCI fail us and roads aren't fit for purpose or looked after as well as they should be. But a lot of the time it's just is rider stress.
I think the riders themselves have to understand their part in the safety. At the end of the day, we also need to, man up or woman up and realize that a big part of our safety is in our own hands, and we are totally entitled to make decisions for ourselves. And I think that it's a mentality in a way that needs to change, because I even have to say this, it's only in the latter part of my career that I'm really actually understanding that, I can say I'm not comfortable to do that. You know what I mean? But we create this sort of mentality, again, that I suppose is the best word to describe it, that you don't even want to question it. It's like, oh, well, okay, the race is on, so I'm racing, but if you don't feel comfortable, you have the right to say, I don't feel comfortable. And you actually have the right to say, I'm not going to start. But we're too afraid to do that.
Trying to get an entire peloton of riders to race more responsibly when adrenaline is flowing and there are high stakes on the line is always going to be a challenge. But what if they had no choice but to slow down? Would it make things safer if there were new equipment regulations designed to do just that? And beyond that, should they be slowed down when the whole idea is to get from A to B as quickly as possible?
The essence of the sport is to go as fast as you can. That's like, you take it back, football, what's the aim of the game? Put the ball in the net. What's the aim of cycling? Go as fast as you can. That's essentially what it's about. Win the race. How do you win the race? You're the fastest. So you're kind of reverting back on the whole ideology of the sport.
You need to sit down with people who knows what they are talking about and find a way to make it, I don't say fair, because it's impossible to make it 100% fair for everybody. For me, these gears, whatever, it's just because then you look at the gear ratio and the RPM and you find out that with a little bit of increase of RPM, you're going to go at the same speed anyway.
Probably the most simple and effective solution would maybe be to put all the riders on a slower tire. Ideally, that's also wider for it to be more stable and have better braking abilities and better ability at corners, more grip and so on.
There are a lot of ideas on the table. For me, one of the ideas is going back into rolling resistance. That's one of the things that actually make us faster in an easy way. Tires get faster and faster and faster. Just set up like a minimum rolling resistance for every tire.
This is very inconvenient for smaller, lighter riders, because for them, if you regulate it somehow, this increased rolling resistance is a bigger proportion of their overall power compared to a rider like, Wout van Aert. For him would be beneficial.
I guess we already have that with the minimum weight limit, right? Is that
this we have the same, this is the same problem actually. I think the idea is maybe to, have different classes or something, I don't know.
So if we take a decision, it's maybe to say, okay, look, the maximum tire you can use is 27 or, these kind of things, but it will apply to all the teams. but they will still be free to use paddy they want. Because otherwise we'll have problems with the teams, we'll have problems with the industry. And it's not like Formula One when they have only one provider for all the tires.
That is something that FIA implemented, which was one tyre for all the drivers.
Yes, but it wasn't the case before, also part of this business model.
Now it is, but they obviously had their Ayrton Senna moment where,
exactly.
I don't know the sport inside out, but from what I've read, there were lots of people calling for the FIA to make significant changes for the safety of drivers. And it was only when one of the most famous drivers in the world lost his life that they then started to. And I think a lot of people are wondering, is that what the UCI is waiting for? Perhaps the names that have died are not quite big enough yet to make these really big changes.
Of course, it's not at all, because as I said, the value of the life of all the riders is the same for us. So we don't make any difference in between the top rider and the other one. And we want to have a safe environment for all the riders.
One major shift in the peloton in recent years is the average age. 10 years ago, it was almost unheard of for a rider to turn pro straight out of the junior ranks. And even when they did eventually turn pro, they would then spend a few seasons learning the ropes from the established champions and road captains of the time. And those champions were, more often than not, in their 30s. Now, many riders are turning pro as teenagers and then immediately winning at the very top level of the sport. But just because they have incredible physiology doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to race in a safe way. So I wanted to know whether a new, more formal type of education could be introduced for youngsters entering the pro peloton.
It's an interesting question, because I also know, if I think back to being a younger version of myself, and the most annoying comment is when people go, when we were younger, or, when I was younger. There is no doubt that as you get older, you become somewhat wiser, and our risk assessment changes, you know what I mean? And cycling is all about calculated risk. Yeah, I do believe that as you get older, the way in which you view risk is maybe changes. You become maturer about it. And also through experience, so through years and years and years of experience, you learn, you have a better concept of risk. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? If I think back generally to when I started, Ina Tatenberg really stands out as one of the riders in the peloton that you didn't dare want to get on the bad side of, because, not that she would be totally rude or out of line, but, she was firm. And that kept everyone kind of in line. And I sometimes feel like maybe we're missing these kind of figures. The youngsters kind of almost, sometimes I feel like the mentality of the younger generation is we can do things faster. We can get there faster. You know what I mean? We don't need to go earn our stripes or go through the same steps or methods of the older generation. But I almost feel like a bit of a missing link is now the kind of education that could be offered to riders to better understand, risk and the dynamics of speed.
If you were to be in charge of the UCI for a couple of years, what would be the first two things that you would do based on your experience to try and improve rider safety?
I would implement education. So as I'm talking about, I'd have to think exactly how, but probably an online course would be the first way of introducing it. Is there a certain process that needs to be fulfilled to get a UCI license, for example?
One thing I do straight off the bat is any rider who gets a pro cycling license, so whether that be World Tour or Pro Conti, whether you put Conti in the mix, I don't know, but has to pass a written exam. I would take it back to the bare roots of that.
And then, something which has already to a certain extent been implemented. Obviously, we have the Safer organization now, which is a body looking just at safety. I think maybe I would look at trying to create something that's quite, that's totally independent, because I feel maybe that's still a place where there's a bit of a missing link, although we have Safer, at the end of the day, they advise, but they don't really have control. From what I understand, in terms of, stopping a race from including a certain part on the course. So I think maybe there could be something that has a bit more authority and is a bit more independent.
As David Lappartient said, 1 death in road racing is too many. 6 deaths in just over 2 years is frankly unacceptable. But just like other aspects of pro cycling, such as revenue sharing, it feels like there are too many key stakeholders who are all as concerned with protecting their own interests, their own piece of the pie, as working together for the greater benefit of the sport as a whole. The UCI, race organisers, teams, riders, even equipment manufacturers, they've all got a role to play. Whether they can all work together to improve safety is a different matter. I just hope it doesn't take an unimaginable catastrophe to make that happen. Incidentally, if you want to watch the full interview with UCI President David Lappartient, you'll soon be able to find that over on our GCN Racing YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, everyone, and please let me know your thoughts on this very sensitive topic in the comments section below.